Good evening, I'm Lady Nopeingham. Tonight, I bring you the finale, Part 3 of the series The Sun Never Rises in Emerald Bay by Lady of Hell. If you missed Parts 1 and 2, be sure to use the links in the description and watch those first, so that you can enjoy this twisted tale from the beginning. Please remember to like if you enjoy, and subscribe so that you don't miss any of these amazing stories. Massive thanks goes out to Lady of Hell and all of the talented writers I feature on my channel. I literally wouldn't be here without you. Now, let us complete this journey we have taken together through the surreal streets of Emerald Bay. The woods were dark. Large trees drowned out the moonlight, and yet it was always bright enough for me to see my surroundings. The eerie silence had returned once more. All I could hear were dry leaves and twigs breaking under my feet. The fairy tale had mentioned beasts who hunted the girl through the forest, and I sure hoped the story wasn't to be taken literally. The prospect of finding Dia was all that kept me on my feet. At least my headache slowly faded, and therefore no lasting damage seemed to be done by the gunshot. It still scared me to no end that I had survived a fatal wound without any consequences, but at the moment I was simply grateful. I had no time for anything that slowed me down. I didn't have to walk far until I reached the hunter's cabin, the place where my little nightmare journey had begun. Dim lights were visible through the windows, and I contemplated walking in and visiting him. I approached a window. The formerly warm and welcoming house was cold now. The temperature seemed to drop as I got closer, and I shivered. Through the window, I saw the hunter's body, pale and lifeless, his shotgun on the desk in front of him. His eyes were rigid as he stared straight ahead, unmoving. Dead. I forced myself to blink the tears away. The man who had saved me in the woods, who had given me a place to rest and a weapon to defend myself, had died. I felt nauseous. The lights grew dimmer and dimmer inside the cabin. I wanted to say something, some sort of last words, an apology, a goodbye, but the words were stuck in my throat. I turned around and faced the human-eyed owl again. It sat on the ground in front of me, and we stared at each other for a moment in complete silence. The lights went out behind me. There was nothing left to do here. I had to continue my way towards the wizard, find Dia, and go home. That was all the reason I had left. I ignored the owl and walked deeper into the forest. The shadows grew darker. The freezing wind tugged on my clothes. I held onto my gun like my life depended on it. Part of me expected a monster to emerge from the darkness, to find myself staring into the glowing eyes and being torn apart by sharp teeth and claws, and yet I couldn't bring myself to fear the dark. It was all too familiar to me to be afraid of it. I remembered how the shadows numbed the pain of the gunshot, how they had been there at the beginning when I had woken up, how they had drowned out the heat, the fire, the lightning. It was a faded, broken memory, shadows devouring the blinding light, replacing the agonizing heat with their cold. There wasn't a lot that I remembered. A car, a faded sunrise, a beautiful wedding ring with a blue crystal, Dia, her wedding dress. You're perfect, Kayla. Fire, lightning, and darkness. The wind should freeze my skin, and yet I welcomed the chill. I walked for a while, always straight ahead, and the owl followed me. For a long time, my surroundings didn't change, But I never slowed down, never changed my direction, just walked on and on until I finally reached something that marked my progress. A car. The remains of a police car in the middle of a dirt road, crashed and burned out, the writing barely visible on the side. I figured it had belonged to the dead policeman I had found in Emerald Bay. At least I was making progress. I paid little attention to the car, just crossed the road and continued on my way. The owl stayed by my side, and contrary to my expectations, no beast ever came for me. It took forever to leave the forest behind, and at the same time, I felt like no time had passed at all. But at some point, the trees disappeared. I stepped onto an open field and found my theory confirmed. The fairy tale was true. In front of me lay a graveyard. I took a deep breath, braced myself for whatever abominations would await me there, and stepped between the graves. The tombstones continued endlessly left and right of me. Each one was black and apparently empty. No name, no dates, no flowers. I lit one of my matches and carried it carefully in front of me, as if it would keep the spirits away. Wet grass brushed my legs. The cries of ravens or crows echoed over the field, yet no bird was to be seen. The heat the small flame radiated clashed with the cool night air, and its light burnt my eyes. I looked around me, gun in my hand, ready to shoot whatever would attack me. But I seemed to be entirely alone. The cemetery was abandoned. Every bird cry in the distance made me jump a little. I quickened my pace until I was almost running. A gust of wind blew the match out, and I jumped as darkness closed in around me again. The full moon illuminated the graves, and it didn't strain my eyes as much as the flame had done, so I didn't light another match. My heart was racing, my fingers trembled, but I didn't slow down. The graves still showed no names, and after countless rows of identical tombstones, I reached the end of the path. A large, fancy grave blocked my way, tombstone made of black marble with a metal cross on top of it. This one had an engraving in faded white letters. Here lies a child, died after birth, unnamed by the parents. The dates were too withered to be read. No flowers lay there, and grass grew high and messy all around the tombstone. This had not been visited in a very long time. The owl landed in front of the tombstone and looked up at me. I looked back. I walked around the grave and realized I had reached the cemetery's end, but in front of me lay no wizard's castle, but a worn-down factory. I took a deep breath. The fairy tale had not been entirely accurate, considering I had encountered neither the beasts nor the spirits. But whether I would find the wizard in a castle or a factory didn't matter to me. For all I cared, he could live in a dumpster. He needed to help me. That was all. The gray man stood next to the entrance. I was on the right way after all. I straightened my back and stepped towards the building. It was gray, except for the red rust, and the large metal door was slightly ajar. The gray man merely looked at me and vanished, so I pushed the door open and walked in. Before me lay a long corridor. Neon lights on the ceiling illuminated everything. I raised my gun and walked, passing metal barrels and a bunch of boxes filled with iron waste. The smell of gasoline filled the air. The lights above me flickered. I looked behind me. No one was there. As I reached the end of the hall, I found myself in front of another door. That's it, I thought. I was sure I would find the wizard beyond this door, and then it would finally be over. I would find Dia. We would go home. If my role was indeed the one of the girl in the fairy tale, I would wake up from this cruel nightmare. My happy end was waiting. I opened the door. The room was small and covered in dirt. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling and covered the machinery. Mold grew on the walls, and debris was littered all over the floor. The air was hot and humid and stuck in my throat. The stench of decay almost made me sick. And in the middle of it all was a dead body. A man in a gray suit, already half decayed, leaned against the wall between cobwebs and mold. The sockets of his eyes were hollow. Rotting skin stretched tightly around his skull, and his clothes were falling apart. But I recognized him nonetheless. The gray man. No, I muttered. I had done everything right. I had listened to the fairy tale, walked through the woods, crossed the cemetery, found the factory. He was supposed to be my wizard. He should help me to wake from this nightmare, to return to my world, to get my happy ending. But he was dead. For a very long time, he was already dead. No, I repeated. You can't be dead. Please, no. I fell to my knees, sobbing. You were supposed to help me. What should I do now? The ghost of the gray man appeared next to his own corpse, staring at me. Why did you even lead me here, asshole? I screamed at him. Just to crush my hopes again? He stared. Dia was out of reach. I had no idea how to leave this place. My last hope was dead, existing only as a mute ghost. I felt lost, hopeless, and utterly defeated. The gray man had helped me, and yet it had all been for nothing. The body in front of me was dead. He couldn't help me. Everything was lost. The ghost raised his arm to point behind me. My will to live not yet lost, I stumbled to my feet and spun around, only to be faced with the cool metal of a gun against my forehead and Monroe's tired eyes staring at me. He looked worse than before. His clothes were covered in blood. He was pale and his eyes were burning with fever. I felt the heat of his body even across the distance between us. His hands trembled slightly, and his breath was shallow. I knew it, he hissed. What? She chose you. He pressed the gun harder against my skull. She abandoned me because she chose you. But this is my role, Kayla. You won't take this away from me. I will kill you, and I will prove to her that I'm the right choice. Kill me? I repeated. You tried that last time, Monroe. You know the definition of insanity? Doing the same shit over and over again and expecting a different result. Anger was boiling inside me at this point. Born from all of the confusion, the fear, and the hopelessness. I wanted to hurt him, whether through my words or with my fists. I remember, he gritted his teeth. I shot you through the head, and here you are, still standing. She gave you her gift, you little bitch, and she took it from me. I barely healed from your bullets. She abandoned me, and that's all your damn fault. He screamed the last words at me, face distorted into a grimace of fury. Who are you talking about? I shouted back. Who am I talking about? You even had the audacity to call her your fucking wife. I clenched my hands into fists. fingernails digging deep into my skin. "Don't you bring my wife into this," I hissed. "She's not your wife." His eyes were burning. Then everything happened very fast. I realized he was about to pull the trigger, so I jerked my hand up and punched his arm as hard as possible. A shot rang through the air, but it missed my body, and I used the momentary distraction to punch Monroe in the face and run past him. There was no time to think about his mad rambling as I ran down the hallway. I had a plan. Footsteps echoed behind me, and I began to run left to right and back again to dodge the bullets. My own gun was still in my hand. I heard bullets hit the wall. A sudden, sharp pain flashed through my shoulder, and I screamed, but kept running. He had hit me. The pain was dull, pulsating in my shoulder and my entire arm. Blood was flowing steadily from the wound. Breathing was difficult. I felt dizzy, but I didn't slow down. The lights still flickered. Gunshot after gunshot echoed from the walls. Monroe screamed at me to stop, but I barely heard him. Once I reached the end of the hallway, I turned around, raised the gun, and shot. 3 bullets missed. 1 hit his stomach. 1 went straight through his head. He fell to the floor, and I wasted no time. Next to me was a barrel full of gasoline, or at least something similar. My arm hurt like hell, but I forced myself to ignore it as I used my full body weight to tip it over and empty the liquid onto the floor. It sparkled in rainbow colors in the neon lights. Trembling fingers retrieved the tinderbox from my pocket. I was panting. My vision was cloudy. I was barely able to light the match. Monroe made a pained sound that sounded almost like no. I threw the match into the liquid and took a step back as I watched the floor and Jack Monroe's body go up in flames. Burning heat hit my cool skin. The pain in my shoulder was mind-numbing. Monroe was dead, once and for all. "Zombie rules, asshole," I spat at his burning body. "Shoot through the head and burn the bodies." I turned and exited the factory before the flames could reach me, stepping outside into the cool night again. Now that I wasn't running for my life, I had the time to consider Monroe's words. I had come here for answers, and now I was all alone with more questions than ever. Who was she? What gift had I received? What did Dia have anything to do with this? How could he say she was not my wife? I remember her, nothing else, but she was there. Her laughter, her white dress, her long blonde hair. "You're perfect, Kayla." The pain from the gunshot distracted me way too much. The gray man, my wizard, was dead. No one would save me now. My head was spinning. The adrenaline from literally fighting for my life left my body quickly. Bright spots were dancing in front of my eyes. I couldn't focus my thoughts anymore. I was dizzy. The gun fell from my hands. My vision faded to black before I hit the ground. I lay there for a while, keeping my eyes closed. I felt grass on my skin, although I was sure I had collapsed on asphalt. The pain had disappeared, yet I didn't dare to move because I feared it would return. "Do you want to know how the fairy tale ends?" I knew that voice. I knew it all too well. And still, I didn't dare to open my eyes because if that was just a dream, I didn't want to wake up. I wouldn't shatter the illusion of Dia being close to me. The girl enters the castle and finds the wizard dead. She turns on the dreamer, angry that he has betrayed her. She kills him and turns the nightmare to cinders, leaving nothing but an ashen wasteland. As she stands in the remains of her world, the ghost of the dreamer appears to her. "Why can't I wake up?" she asks him. "Do you know the answer, Kayla?" I didn't respond. Dia giggled. "The girl is dead." She answered the question herself. "Doomed to dream for all eternity." "So why did you lie to me?" she says to the dreamer's ghost. "Why did you tell me the nightmare would end?" And he shakes his head and smiles a sad smile. "Because there was nothing left for you but pleasant lies," he tells her, and disappears forever. The girl has killed the only friend she had left and is trapped in her desolated nightmare forever. I winced. Why? Why did my wife tell me that? What was going on here? There isn't always a happy end, Kayla. And now, show me a little respect and get up. Playing dead doesn't suit you. I opened my eyes and realized I was lying in front of the grave of the nameless child. It was still night, but the grave was different now. Flowers were placed all around it, and candles were lit. And right in front of the tombstone stood my wife. It was weird to see her face after trying to recall it for what seemed like an eternity. She was beautiful, stunning even. Bright blue eyes, face like an angel, long blonde hair falling down to her waist. She wore a long white dress. "Dia," I whispered. "Oh, so you remember our conversation. How unexpected." What are you talking about?" "Our little meeting after you arrived," she explained patiently. "I don't understand." Instinctively, I reached for the knife in my pocket, but it wasn't there. I had no weapon. "You're my wife. We came here together." "Wife? Oh dear, you don't remember anything." "Explain it then," I demanded. The whole situation was off, almost unreal, but vaguely familiar, like an old memory just out of reach. What is this place? Where am I? "Well, if you want me to." She leaned casually against the tombstone. "This is my grave, Kayla. My body is buried here." I looked at the woman who I had called my wife mere minutes ago. The woman I had wanted to find so desperately, who had been my sole motivation for going further and further in this hellscape. But she shut me up with a simple gesture. Now, as you might realize, I don't quite agree with the being dead thing, since I can still exist in dreams. Which is, to be honest, not enough. I want to return to the real world, Kayla, but I need a body. A compatible one, to be exact. "What the hell are you talking about?" I screamed at her. Nothing of that made sense. Dia was my wife. I remembered her. "About the people you met, all of them seemed so promising, and yet they didn't fit." "Monroe?" I didn't finish the question. "He was almost perfect," she sighed. "The others were nothing. Reduced to insanity in such a short amount of time. He handled it well, but the madness took over after all." My mind tried to comprehend the words, but failed. I felt dizzy again and leaned onto a nearby gravestone for support. "Stop speaking in riddles." "I'm not," You are just a little slow. This was my wife, I thought, and yet she was a perfect stranger at the same time. My memories were confusing. I felt like my head was about to explode. The seamstress and the hanged man and Monroe, they were not compatible with you? See, not so hard when you use your brain a little. She flashed a condescending smile. Poor Jack took it a little personally, I think. He became obsessed with me. Tried so hard to be perfect, so maybe he could fulfill the role he so desperately craved. What about the ghost, the gray man? She waved her hand dismissively. Merely an echo of another failure. He's no different from the others. Why did he help me then? Exasperated, I threw my hands in the air. Because he hates me. Contrary to Monroe, he never wanted to become my vessel. Maybe he thought he could actually save you. Poor, confused man. This is ridiculous, I snapped. So, you're not my wife? Why do I remember you then? What happened? Why am I here? I survived a bullet through the head, goddammit. I can't remember anything, and I want answers right now. For what felt like hours, she simply looked at me, the hint of a smile on her lips. You still don't realize, she then said. Are you hungry, Kayla? Thirsty? I blinked. What had that to do with anything? No, I'm not, I answered. You don't need to eat or drink. A bullet doesn't kill you. You really can't figure it out by yourself? She raised an eyebrow. As I didn't answer, her lips twisted into a smirk. You're dead, Kayla. The terror that gripped me in that moment was indescribable. I felt my whole body go numb. My skin ran cold as I clutched onto the gravestone. That wasn't true. It couldn't be. I was standing there. I was alive. There was no way that could be true. I shook my head again and again and again, as if I could simply shake the thought away. And suddenly, memories flooded my racing mind as all the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. I had been in the car, the police car. My partner had sat in the driver's seat, proudly showing me his wedding ring, a silver one with a blue crystal inside. We had been driving towards a town called Emerald Bay, as apparently some campers had gone missing there. The sun had just set as we entered the woods, when all of a sudden a person had appeared on the road right in front of us. The car had spiraled out of control and crashed against a tree. It had caught on fire immediately. I had tried to get out, but the door wouldn't budge, and I had felt the fire burning the skin off of my bones. I had screamed until I had finally fallen unconscious. I had died at that point. And then I had woken up again, in this exact place, with Dia in front of me. She had asked me if I wanted to live, and of course I had agreed immediately. You're perfect, Kayla, she had said with a smile, and then shadows had taken over my body, and I had woken up in the woods, my body burnt, and my mind delirious from fever. The crashed car in the woods had been mine. The dead policeman had been my partner. I was dead. Do you remember now? Dia asked. My body was shaking. I nodded, trying to breathe, and realized at the same time that it didn't matter. I didn't need oxygen anymore. I was a walking corpse. "You want me as your new body," I said to Dia. My voice sounded weak. "Oh, I would have loved to have you. But sadly, you don't fit. Not as perfect as I thought, after all." "Then let me go," she laughed. "You died, Kayla. You're only standing here because my shadows keep your heart beating. There's no place left for you but my nightmare." I wrapped my arms tightly around my torso, drawing shaky breaths. The wife I had searched for didn't exist. There was no way for me to go home. All hope was lost. "What do you want from me?" I asked Dia weakly. "For now, nothing." She stepped closer and lay a hand on my arm. "The madness will take you soon enough, and you'll bring me new bodies, just like Jack did." I shook my head again. "Never," I spat. "We'll see about that, Kayla." She turned around and walked away, back towards the grave as the world around me faded to white. I woke in front of the factory again. The wound in my shoulder no longer existed. "Now, this is the end. I wrote everything down, and if this warning reaches you, please remember to stay away from Emerald Bay, no matter what reason could lead you here. I still don't understand everything, but most of it is clear now. Monroe had just saved me to sacrifice me to his beloved Dia himself. The Gray Man had saved me to spite Dia, and everybody else had just succumbed to insanity. This place is her dream, and yet somehow it's also real. I'm afraid of what she might be capable of if she ever finds a suitable body. The moon stands unmoving on the black sky. Everything I have thought to remember is a lie. I have no wife. I am not alive. All I have done since I woke up in the forest has been for nothing. I won't end up like the others. I won't kill innocent people and help Dia's mad goal. As soon as this is finished, I will return to the factory, douse myself in gasoline, and burn this body to ashes. I'm hyper-aware of the shadows inside me, constricting around my heart to keep it beating. I don't remember anything before the car crash. To anyone I might leave behind, I'm sorry and goodbye. My story is over. No last sunrise for me to see. I hope this reaches the real world, however impossible that might be. Stay away from Emerald Bay. Only death waits here. Kayla Chase. This is where the diary ends. Dismissing this as a made-up story would be easy, I know. But I guess I should mention that my friends returned to the place where they found the diary. They've read it too and decided against all warnings to search for Emerald Bay. According to them, they had made it into the woods where the hunter's cabin was supposed to be when they had encountered a person with charred skin. They aren't sure if the burnt person wanted to attack them or drive them off, but they ran away and haven't returned there yet. They got separated, though, and one hasn't come back yet. Hey everyone, thank you all so much for taking this epic journey with me. I hope you enjoyed this amazing story by Lady of Hell. I will be releasing the full story in one video soon, for anyone interested in marathoning through from beginning to end. Please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and share this story with anyone you think might need a little spookiness in their lives. That's all for now. Have a great evening, everyone.